No. This intro is lame. Let me handle this.
Late night searching for ghosts under the moonlight, eerie stories where shadows linger behind the whispers, the past a mystery. Psych specters, cue bright tales, all the time haunting our every turn, chasing echoes where the lanterns burn. Brace yourself for the eerie night, beneath the moon our spirits ignite. Oh, history goes bump. Oh, history goes bump. Dark halls where the voices call, footsteps echo, heartbeats hollow, haunted places in the nightfall. Creeping chill, own will, uncover any secrets where no light dwells, spooky tales where the mystery sells. Brace yourself for the eerie night, beneath the moon our spirits ignite. Oh, history goes bump. Whoa, history goes bump. Together we tread where the night belongs, in the dance of the shadows where the dark calls home, where it goes wrong.
Kelly?
What?
We are 10 years old.
Nuh-uh.
We are celebrating a dead Cade of History Goes Bump.
I see what you did there.
We celebrate a dead Cade.
On October 1st, 2014, the first episode of History Goes Bump dropped. Diane never imagined that this little hobby she started up would get over 8 million downloads, be nominated for awards, get covered in magazines, and become another form of income for us. She just hoped her family and friends would listen and enjoy what they heard. But she also hoped that it would become more and get people excited about history and introduce people to some great historical locations. We hope in some small way we've helped to develop your appreciation for historic architecture and inspired you to support the preservation of old buildings. And obviously, we hope we've given you a welcome space for sharing your unexplained experiences and a community to care about you and what happens to your spirit, both here and in the afterlife. That is the greatest reward of all.
So through all these years, we are almost at 560 official episodes. And then, Kelly, we have added other content as well. So there are well over, probably close to 700 episodes out there that you can listen to on the free feed. And then over for people who support the show, we've got over 350, I think, over there as well.
Yeah, so about 1,000, give or take, if you subscribe as a Patreon.
It's a lot of content. And, people are always like, hey, have you heard about this place? Have you heard about that place? And you would think we'd be like, we've heard of all of them. But indeed, we have not heard about all of them yet.
Nope, there's still new places to explore and cover in their history and hauntings.
So what we're going to do with this episode, in the past, we have had our flash fiction contest. And we stopped doing that last year because we just weren't getting as many submissions. And then last year we had some listeners join us to share some of their haunting experiences. And we asked them questions about, if you were going to die, what outfit would you want to be stuck in the afterlife? And
Parachute Pants was an overwhelming winner. Oh, no? Okay.
No, it was not. And, asking people what ghosts and stuff were. And I thought with this episode, since this is our Dead Cade anniversary show, we would just focus on History Goes Bump. So first of all, I thought we could talk a little bit about some of our favorite episodes. Then I wanted to pay a little bit of homage to Jessica Chobot and Bizarre States and play a couple of clips from back in the day when they were sharing about little History Goes Bump, because it was actually her that catapulted us out of, we got a few thousand downloads to where we've gotten today. I always look back to her to thank her. And guys, I did try as best as I could to get her to join us for this, but trying to get a celebrity's attention when they have you can't get them through their DMs, and I couldn't find her agency that she was through. And in the past, I used to tweet to her and stuff, but I couldn't get her attention. So instead of having her on here for a few minutes so that we could thank her and just tell her how much it meant to us that she just took this little old show that nobody was paying attention to and put us in the stratosphere. Then we're going to talk about, it's kind of an ancestor, but it's more I would just say a relative because they're not that far in the past. And we'll share the story about how we found out about, I have this famous general in my family from World War II that you would normally be proud to have a famous general from World War II, only he wasn't playing for our team.
No, he wasn't on our side.
So we're going to talk about that. And my dad is going to make his first ever appearance on History Goes Bump to share a little bit of family lore about this particular person.
I know. I love that.
Then we are going to share some other content that we're going to be starting now that we're going into our next decade of production. We're going to be bringing a couple of other types of episodes to you guys. And then we'll play what everybody loves about the show, some of our favorite bloopers. Are you ready to get this celebration going, Kelly?
I'm ready.
Let's crack some beer. Hey, we have some pumpkin flavored whiskey.
That is true.
Shots all around, everybody.
Strap in. Put your seatbelts on.
Here we go. Kelly, I'm holding here in my hand, how many pages is this? I went through because as we were doing now that we advertise on the show, we have to keep track of where the slots are. So I went back through all of the episodes that we had and figured out where we were going to put all these slots. So I have this list here.
Slots for advertisement.
Yeah, not for gambling. You can't pull the lever. And how many, can you hold the microphone for me while I count these pages? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have 15 pages here, and each one has almost 50 entries on it. That's a lot of shows.
That is a lot of shows.
Kelly, we've done some great stuff here, and we've been going back through and doing reduxes of some of these earlier shows. So people are probably more familiar with the Stanley Hotel, Bloody Mary, the Winchester Mystery House. These were a lot of them that we did early on. But we've covered some things that you're not going to hear about on other shows, like the Kremlin. I mean, who's talking about the haunted Kremlin?
Not many.
History Goes Bump is. We also had the Legend of Black Aggie. We had a listener say, hey, have you guys ever heard of Black Aggie? And we're like, what? And then we looked into that. Just fascinating stuff.
Yep.
Then we got started with our Haunted Cemeteries episodes, which I think are everybody's favorites.
Yeah, definitely.
Including you and I.
Exactly.
The Valley of the Kings. I mean, Haunted Egypt.
Yeah, not many podcasts will be covering these locations that we tend to touch on. And you know what's interesting is it's the more unique and obscure ones that tend to get the biggest reaction.
It's amazing. Just like we just did the Arlington Hotel and Hot Springs with it. And that was one of those that I'm like, I don't think we're going to get a lot of interaction with this. And we got lots of comments on it. And then we had the guy email us about No and Tea, which is just amazing.
This is true.
Love it when that happens. Haunted Dolls. That is never going to be my favorite episode. Do you have a favorite episode that we've done? I mean, I know one of our favorite episodes between us mutually is always going to be The Legend of Elementals, not only because it's a fascinating topic, but what was that, Kelly?
It was my premiere episode.
It was your first official episode.
Yeah. Aside from joining you on like the Halloween specials and so forth.
Yeah, or the investigations that we did. You joined on a couple of those. But yeah, so that was very cool. The other thing I love doing, Life and Afterlife.
Always. They're
And
always good shows.
Always looking for some celebrity or politician. We'll have more of those coming up here in the future for sure. Haunted music. One of my favorite things that we did as well.
Loved hearing about the Devil's Chord because as a musician, you come across that quite often when you're performing or just playing a piece. And Loved hearing the background on it.
Well, and what's cool is when you're like watching a horror movie, obviously it's the music that sets the tone.
Absolutely.
And when you realize that there are certain chords in music that when you listen to them, you're like, oh, I feel kind of disturbed when I listen to that. But you don't really think about the fact that there might be something in the way those chords are set up and the progression and everything. It's actually meant to do that. And it's a spiritual thing.
Right.
It's not just notes on a piece of paper. It's like, and when you know that Satan was supposedly the basic music director in heaven for many, many years and was actually, his body seems like it's a musical instrument with pipes and everything. And then you look at like the devil's chord and some creepy music. It's like, oh.
Yikes.
Is there such a thing as satanic music? Eee! I love talking about fairies. We've talked about cryptids.
Love the fae folk, yes. And cryptids.
Cryptids can be very, very fascinating. We've had lots of listeners join us through the years talking about particular locations that they've been to. Some of them have been tour guides at those locations. Legend of the Balkans. Here's another one. You're probably not going to hear it on a lot of shows. And we had one of our listeners who suggested this to us, who actually lived there. I believe he was there as like a language instructor or something, and shared like legends that they have there. It's just fascinating.
So in Albania, where I am, you'll find a story particularly about witches are known for having blue eyes, supposedly. They're usually the loners in the community. There's a way that it crosses over with a lot of other Western lore. The lonely woman who has many animals, she has blue eyes, she'll stay away from the community. I think the most interesting story I've been told. So one of my neighbors was telling me back in 1998 when her husband died. Now, she's an older lady, to get some context. Her husband died in 1998 from a heart attack. Apparently, there was some issues with one of their neighbors who supposedly the village had claimed she was a witch. And so she lived on the outskirts. Well, for whatever reason, they had issues with this supposed witch. And when he passed away, this old supposed witch was staring outside of her window when the procession was going through the community. Now, in Albania, because of traditional Sunni Muslim customs, there are essentially two different funerals. The men will take the body out if it is a gentleman who passed away, and he will be buried with, the men will bury him, and then the women will follow after to mourn. And so where I am, like I said, it's very, very traditional. And so they follow that, even if not everyone is particularly religious. So when the second procession was coming for the women to follow, apparently this old woman, who's again supposedly this witch, was still staring at where the funeral was taking place at the graveyard. And it caught the attention of the couple's daughter. So she went over to the house to go confront this woman and found the door open, went upstairs to talk to this woman. This woman, who is supposedly the witch, stares at her and starts muttering and making what is a hex, a curse towards the daughter and her family. Of course, this young lady runs out scared and runs back to her family. Well, sometime later, this young lady, she gets married, and she and her new husband are trying to have a child. Well, she miscarriages the first time. So sometime later, they try again. She miscarriages again. And they try a third time. And again, she miscarriages. From what I was told, they went to the local imam to basically get the equivalent of a exorcism done. Supposedly, the whole family was exorcised by this imam. Everything was solved and all cured. The funny thing is that this old lady, she just disappeared right after that. It's like she never even existed. The house was left abandoned. There was nothing there. And that was it. Stories like that.
I remember too, I can't remember what her name was, but she worked at the Henry Ford Museum and was sharing all of the different displays and stuff they had there. We've had Jenny Watt was one of our listeners from Australia, and she joined us on a couple of episodes talking about places that were from Australia. We had Freya, our young listener, join us she lived in Australia and she was also from Wales. So she joined us talking about locations in Wales. And I remember her grandmother joined us in the background on one of them and kept hollering how to say some of the Welsh names.
Right.
So that was kind of fun having grandma there for that. My mom has joined us on several episodes. I know she did the Molly Brown House with us from Colorado, the Andersonville prison. Tim Shaw, who is a paranormal investigator that has been on TV and such, he has joined us and talked about Fort Niagara. I remember that one, and also the Hinsdale House. I love it when we get people who've like personally been to a location. A lot of our listeners have done paranormal investigations And that's the other thing I love doing. Now, when you came on board, we actually started tempting the spirits, even though we used to say, don't do it.
Kind and respectful way, but actually pursuing the interactions and communications. But yes.
I've had so much fun sharing our investigations with people, and I hope that they have been fascinated by them as well, and maybe even made some people who were more skeptical kind of come over that line a little bit. Like, that's where we got. We were skeptical, and then we've gotten to be more like believing in this stuff as we've had things happen.
Or if they were fearful in regards to any possibilities of doing an investigation or just simply having interactions with spirits, maybe they started to feel a little bit more comfortable. And I really like when we have revisited a location where it wasn't investigated previously, we investigated it, and then we redo the episode with the investigation.
Exactly. We not only did the Salem witch hunts, but we did history of witch hunts. So we covered other witch hunts that have gone on. Then we started doing phantasmal crime. And it's not just, there are podcasts that will do true crime and haunting stuff in the same episode, but they're like, this is the true crime story, and then this is the ghost story, and they're totally separate stories.
Yeah, there's no overlap.
No, our phantasmal crime is true crime that has some kind of paranormal connected to it, whether it's a psychic that helps to solve the crime. How about the circus series?
Oh, that was amazing, too.
That was one of my favorite to put together. We had 4 of them. We talked about the history of the circus. Then we talked about the history of the performers, the Ringlings in Wisconsin, and the Ringlings in Florida. And we toured all the stuff in Florida.
Yes, we did.
Man, that was so much fun. And of course, we need to get up to Baraboo so we can see the Baraboo Inn up there. But
yes, I really want to go
when we'll be in Wisconsin. But they actually invited us to come up, and we were joined by performers who told us about their experiences and also shared some of the hauntings that they've had as well. And of course, we love the old county jails. We've not only investigated a lot of them, but we've also covered a lot of them. Then we started doing paranormal conversations, and we've had a lot of fascinating guests join us for those.
We have. There is one overwhelming favorite, though, with Clint. Clint Hopper.
Yes. And wouldn't you know, he's just one of our listeners, you know? Not some...
Love speaking with listeners and having them share their information with us.
Yeah, not a paranormal bigwig or anything. And one of our favorite guests that we've had join us, who is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to especially the naval history about stuff, but just military history in general, Jared.
Yes, our son Jared. He definitely gets a lot of fan responses as well, which I know he enjoys hearing about.
Then, of course, we've covered the places like Skinwalker Ranch and the Conjuring House and a lot of these big names, and it's just been a very interesting journey that we've had. When I first started the podcast, I didn't think anybody was going to listen to it other than my family and friends. And we got about to, I think it was sometime in October of 2015. So we got to about the 1 year mark. And somebody had come into the Spooktacular crew and said, oh my gosh, Bizarre States mentioned History Goes Bump on their show. And I had noticed that our downloads had like quadrupled. And I was like, oh, wow, I wonder, maybe it's because we're coming into October and people are looking for something spooky to listen to. And literally, History Goes Bump was one of the only paranormal podcasts out there. And we were the only one that was like, here's a historic location, history, ghosts that go with it. Now there's a bunch, but we were the only ones that were out there to begin with.
That covered it in that fashion.
Exactly. I mean, occasionally Jim Harold would have somebody on to talk about a location and the hauntings that go with it, but he covered all kinds of stuff on his paranormal podcast. They were doing everything, whereas we were very specific about what we were covering. So I went to see, well, what is this Bizarre States that they mentioned? And I saw that it was part of the Nerdist network, and now it's kind of defunct, but back in the day, Nerdist was like big. And I went, ooh, this is like a big network. And then I went and looked up Jessica Chobot, because then I listened and it was so wonderful. I can't find that original audio anywhere. I listened through several of their episodes and I'm like, where is that original one? But she spoke about us for like 10 minutes and just in these glowing terms. And when I went to see like how many followers she had on Twitter, it was, hundreds of thousands. And I was like, wow. And then we were having fun because people would start paying attention and mentioning it in the crew like, hey, they mentioned you again here. So I'm going to play a couple of those bits. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool.
Just to toot our own horn?
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. Especially because a lot of people are into Jessica Chobot because they've gotten to know her from Expedition X. This is before Expedition X, before she was as well known as she is now.
And that brings us to our main topic for the day, which is the Gunter Hotel. So I'm kind of slightly obsessed. I'm on a big kick now about haunted hotels in general. I don't know why. They're just, I don't know if I'm having like some Stephen King, The Shining kind of thing, if it's because it's October. I've been listening to a lot of other people's haunted podcasts, and I happened across this one from somebody else's podcast, which I highly recommend, called, let me look it up for you. I have it on my phone. History Goes Bump podcast. I highly recommend it. It's very, very good. The girls do a lot of great research. These two women that basically give you a little bit of backstory on their locations, and then are really big on going on haunted tours and tell you about their tours and stuff. It's a very, very fun podcast. I really like it. Anyway, one of the things that they brought up, which I'd like to talk about here because I thought it was very interesting, was the Gunter Hotel, which I've never heard of. I feel like I am pretty well educated in my haunted locations. I've read a ton of like America's greatest haunted locations, and then like specifically down to Michigan's greatest haunted, Weird USA or Weird Michigan or Weird LA, or I've read a lot, usually specifically on the areas that I am located in because I want to find some cool hot spots, but that always usually brings you into other stories. It's hard to just, it's like chips. It's hard to just eat one, So I have never heard of this one before. Founded back in 1836 by New York speculator O'Shea Wilder, probably Wilder, who was hoping to build a port town to rival Chicago and Milwaukee. Like I said before, located and buried underneath the sand dunes along Lake Michigan, at the mouth of the Kalamazoo River in Saugatuck Township, nearby the cities of Saugatuck and Douglas. Oddly enough, this is also the location of the Felt Mansion, which I personally stumbled upon by accident back in 2006, right when it was starting to get refurbished. And the Felt Mansion is the mansion that I mentioned that History Goes Bump, who I'm always referencing, had posted about, because I didn't realize that I was in the Felt Mansion until I heard this podcast of theirs. I had just gone, and we were basically driving around Saugatuck in the woods, just kind of kicking it. Came upon this huge plot of land with this gorgeous house that was like trying to like kickstart itself into not being torn down, like doing tours and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So we took one of the tours, and during one of the tours, they took us to a section that kind of was like an in-between spot between the attic and like all the lower levels. And it was a gigantic ballroom that kind of spanned the whole top of the house. And I remember, but they hadn't fixed it yet, so it was real creepy. And I remember taking a picture of there because I felt like something was watching me from the other end of the hall. And I never put two and two together until this podcast when they mentioned Felt Mansion in Saugatuck. And I looked it up, and sure enough, that's the place that I was. And
haunted AF.
It's haunted AF.
Yeah.
It's haunted by the original owners, Agnes and Dor Felt. And so this next story isn't so much news, but as everybody knows, I often talk about History Goes Bump, one of my regular podcasts that I listen to. And recently, I think, in fact, their most recent episode, they talked about the Felt Mansion, which is haunted. It's outside of this place in Michigan called Saugatuck in Holland. It's a big thing. I just wanted to talk about it because I thought it was super cool. I actually randomly ran into that house back in like 2003 when they had initially started to refurbish it, and took a bunch of pictures, took a tour of the place because it was open to the public at the time. Even though it was still kind of under construction. And I remember specifically how creepy it was because it had this huge widow's walk that extended the length of the roof. And then to get to the widow's walk, you kind of went through this, what at the time they were fixing it up, but this attic space that they were turning into, and I think has since been turned into this gigantic ballroom, which also runs the length of the house. So it's huge, and it's really deep and kind of narrow, actually. So yeah, going up there, we did the tour and everything. I always wondered where I had been because I could never remember the name of the mansion. And I remember when we were leaving, I was super creeped out and taking a bunch of pictures because I just felt that somebody was watching me. And lo and behold, now, 2014... or what are we in? 2016.
2014.
14.
This is actually a podcast from the past.
From time travel.
Your story's making me cry, but continue.
Yeah, 2016, I'm listening to the podcast, and all of a sudden it strikes me, oh my God, this is it. So I looked it up, and sure enough, Felt Mansion is where I was back in 2003, and I am convinced, and it is haunted. That's what the podcast had said, and I am convinced that something was watching me when I was there. I wish I could find the pictures too, but I lost them in the divorce. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. So, Kelly, back in July here of 2024, I create these things called kidney stones, and I ended up in the hospital, had to have a couple of surgeries, and about a week after I had my second surgery, I wasn't feeling very well. I thought there was something wrong, so we go into the ER, because I'm like, I need them to do a CT scan. So we get in there, get my IV hooked up, they take me over, I do a CT scan, I still haven't seen a doctor or anything, so it took him a little while to come in there, and he comes in, and he goes, "Student, is that your last name?" And I was like, oh, great. Here comes the, have you been a student your whole life? Are you going to marry a teacher? Or something, there's always some comment about that. So I was like, or they don't think it's really your real last name. Yeah, that's my last name. Did you know you had a famous general that has the same name as you? And I was like, no, because I've had lots of family members that have been in the military.
Right.
My dad, my grandfather, my uncles. But I was like, none of them got to general. And he goes, oh, yeah, there's this general, Kurt Student. And I was like, oh, no, I don't think I've ever heard of him.
And it was student
from Germany. And he goes on to tell me that this guy was like the leader of the paratroopers and that he basically was the pioneer of aerial fighting and that kind of stuff, where I don't know, dog fighting almost. Yeah.
Aerial assaults.
Yes, that was it. And I was just like, no, I had no idea. And I'm not thinking in the front of my brain, Kelly, about that. He keeps saying like Germany, Germany, blah, blah,
right,
blah, blah.
Right.
And he's mentioning, World War I and World War II. And I'm still not clicking in. And he was like, well, when you get home, go ahead and Google it. So I was like, okay. So I get home and I go ahead and Google it. And I want to share. Now, this is an ancestor that you're not really going to be proud to be related to. Now, at the
Right.
time, I don't know that I'm related to this person. I just know there's this General Kurt Student. So let me share a little about this individual. He lived from 1890 to 1978, and he played an important role in establishing Hitler's secret Luftwaffe, which was the Air Force. So yes, I see that and I go, oh crap, this guy's a Nazi.
Well,
He promoted the idea of using parachute assaults and glider attacks in warfare. He masterminded the German airborne attack on Crete and was responsible for the deaths of thousands. He was born in an upper-middle-class German family in the city of Burgholz on May 12, 1890. He went to school to train for a career in the military. Upon graduating in 1911, he became a lieutenant in the Imperial German Army. In 1913, he trained to be a pilot in the Army Air Force. During World War I, Student flew against the Russians and was one of 4 pilots to test a new kind of fighter plane called a Fokker, I think. Or is it
Fokker?
I don't know which way it is.
Now I'm going to the movie Meet the Parents.
Hey, Fokker. In 1916, he was sent to the Western Front where he led a group of fighter pilots called a flying circus. He was badly wounded in an aerial battle between fighter planes and crash-landed. Student became director of air technical training schools in 1932. When Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, he created the German Air Force called the Luftwaffe. Student was promoted to lieutenant colonel in the Luftwaffe and created new technical courses and training programs for airmen. He moved up in the military, and on June 1st, 1938, he became a major general and head of the 7th, I think it's Flieger Division, which was the first German parachute division. The paratroopers were known for their close connection to the Nazi Party. The paratroops were used in the invasion of Denmark and Norway on April 9th, 1940, along with land and sea forces. These paratroopers had great success in Belgium and Holland, and this impressed Hitler. Student received a medal and promotion for his part in the attacks. January 25th, 1941, Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, took Student to meet with Hitler. So yay, he was friends with Göring. Isn't that great? They discussed an invasion of Britain, but Hitler was not very enthusiastic. On the train returning to Berlin, Göring spoke with Student about attacking the British position in the Mediterranean Sea and the Middle East. Göring told Student to create plans for airborne attacks against Gibraltar, Malta, Cyprus, Crete, and the Suez Canal. Callum MacDonald wrote the book The Lost Battle, Crete, 1941, and in this he talks about the general. He says, Student was desperate to participate in this campaign by attacking Crete. Student was driven by his fierce professional ambition. Impatient with the role of spectator, he wanted to demonstrate his theories on mass parachute operations, silence his critics, and consolidate his own position in the military hierarchy of the Third Reich. So on April 21st, 1941, a student met with Hitler and convinced him to attack Crete. Hitler issued Directive Number 28 on April 25th, ordering the capture of Crete in an operation codenamed Mercury. The fighting was heavy, with many casualties among the German paratroopers who had not yet captured an airfield. In Athens, Student was very concerned about how the attack was progressing because the future of the airborne forces and his own career were at stake. If his troops did not capture it, Student was prepared to commit suicide, he admitted after the war. So if he failed, he was going to kill himself. Hitler and Göring were very disturbed by the heavy losses among the paratroopers. Student was ordered to remain in Greece and not to go to Crete at that point, and he was replaced by another general. This was Julius Ringel. He fought bitterly against his removal, but they still kind of gave him the boot. He was allowed to leave Athens and go to Crete later, although he still did not have direct control over the operation. On May 31st, Student ordered a policy of exemplary terror against partisans, including shooting hostages, burning villages, and exterminating the male population of civilians in certain areas. So basically, he killed thousands of people. Definitely what I would call a war crime. Of these losses, Student wrote in Commando, "For me, the Battle of Crete carries bitter memories. I miscalculated when I suggested this attack, which resulted in the loss of so many valuable parachutists that it meant the end of the German airborne landing forces which I had created." Hitler was very disturbed by the losses, and major German airborne operations were not used again. For the rest of the war, Student's forces fought as infantry in Sicily, Italy, and Northwest Europe. At the end of the war, Student was captured by the British. He was interrogated in London and accused of mistreatment and murder of prisoners of war. In May 1947, he came before a military tribunal to answer 8 charges of war crimes by his forces in Crete. He was found guilty of 3 of the charges and sentenced to 5 years in prison, but the verdict was not confirmed. So he was never tried for crimes against civilians, and he never paid for the war crimes that he was actually charged with. In September 1947, the Greeks asked to have Student turned over to them, but this request was refused. Later, Student was given a medical discharge. He was married, had 1 son who later died in the military. He died in Lemgo, West Germany on July 1st, 1978. I look all this up and I'm looking at Kelly going, oh my gosh, this guy was a Nazi. This is awful. I hope I'm not related to him.
Well.
So I call up my parents and I said, funny thing happened while we were at the ER today. This ER doctor mentions this General Kurt Student. Have you guys heard about this? And my dad's like, oh yes. And then when he proceeds to tell me the story about us finding out about this relative, it clicked in my head. And then I remembered as a kid that we met up with this person who was like his name was Jack Student, and my dad's going to tell a little bit about him here in a minute. And I was like, oh, I remember meeting him. And I remember people talking about General Student, but I didn't know that he was a Nazi or any of the details or anything. I just remembered meeting Jack. He rode a motorcycle and he was giving all the kids a ride on the motorcycle. And I said, I don't want to get on the motorcycle. And so I said, why don't you go to his daughter? And she gets on it. And for some reason, the motorcycle popped a wheelie all on its own and she went flying off the back and her leg got all road rashy and stuff. So I was glad I didn't get on the motorcycle. That's all I remember about it. And I've never gotten on a motorcycle because of that experience. So that's all I remembered. So my dad's like, oh no, we're related. So I'm going to go ahead now and let my dad share some of the family lore that's connected to this and to General Student. And again, normally, if it was, on the British side or the American side, I'd be like, wow, I have this great general in my family history and look at all the history behind it and actually created this paratroop group and did all this stuff. And yeah.
Not so much.
Not something to be proud of. No. Okay, so I thought it'd be fun, Dad, for you to share some of the family lore about the Student family in Germany and how we ended up having some that were here in America and how there were some still in Germany.
Okay. If you don't mind, today I think I'll pretend I'm Mike Rowe and I'll tell you that this is the way I heard it. Is it way back when, I don't know if it was 1800s, is that there was a family named Student that lived in Germany. And they were the aristocrats. They were such a powerful family that they had a castle. And so it's like what you hear in other stories that, here's the here's the lord of the land, and he takes care of all the people that they lease farms from him and do that stuff, take care of all the property. And so basically is that there was the father, and then there was, that I know of, there could be more, but there was 3 specific sons in the family. Of course, being the lord that he was, is that he always made sure that they never interacted with the common folk. So, to his dismay is that, one of the sons fell in love with the gardener's daughter, which was definitely taboo for as far as the dad was concerned. And the brother knew that there was no way in the world that he could marry this young lady. And so he decided that, hey, I heard of this country called America. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to take what I can, give up everything that I've got here for the love of my life, and go to America. But he decided to take a check with his 2 other brothers and see what their thoughts were. And maybe they didn't like the way Dad did things or anything else. 3 of them all decided, yes, we're going to go to America. So they boarded ship, came to America, and I'm trying to remember exactly what places they went to. We know for sure was St. Louis. One was on the West Coast, like in Seattle. And then the other one could have been in Pennsylvania, which I think was true, or Michigan. Those were so anyway, those were the spots where they landed. So then there was the American students and the pure German students. And generations past, we went to World War, we were involved in World War I and also World War II. There was a general student from the general side that was, of course,
From
in
the German side.
German side, was in Germany. And he was, I don't know if it was in World War I, but for sure, as time went by, he became the general in charge of the Luftwaffe, which is the paratroopers. Is the general never jumped out of a plane, never put a parachute probably on his back, but he was in charge of them. As the close to the end of the war, is that the general was riding, and you probably see in TV those big open German cars and with convertible, and he was riding in it, and somebody decided to shoot him and assassinate him, and whatever happened to that person, I don't know. But what was interesting is the general was such a staunch military man, is how many people carry the like when I was in the Army, the military code of justice book in your pocket. Well, he did, he had it in his pocket, and guess where the bullet went? That saved his life. So this was, the war ended. He was never convicted of any war crimes. As time went by, is that a person by the name of Jack Student came to, was stationed for just a temporary duty, in the military at Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado. And so Jack always, wherever he went, is that he would always look in the telephone directory. I know most people probably don't know what that is. But it's probably yellow pages on the internet right now, or white pages. I think it's the white pages now. But he decided, thought it was fun to see if he could connect, if there was anybody that was related to him. Because I grew up in the St. Louis area, so I was part of that branch, and literally every person that was named Student in the state of Missouri, at least in the city of St. Louis, was related in some way, shape, or form to me. Anyway, Jack gave us a call. We started exchanging a few things, communication-wise, and then said, hey, let's get together for a barbecue. So we went over to his place for a barbecue. One of the first things I noticed right away is how much he looked like my brother. So I go, wow, the genes are pretty strong in the family. So what was interesting, why I'm bringing Jack into the story, is that Jack went to Germany during his tenure in the military. And while he was over there, he did his usual thing and said, hey, gosh, I'm going to go call. Oh, there's the general Student is still alive. Somehow he got the number. He gave him a call, and Jack could speak German. That was the good thing. So Jack was talking with General Student, and somewhere along the line, naturally, the general kind of wanted to understand where heritage-wise he was coming from. And Jack says, well, I'm from America. I have a whole family generation. And immediately the general hung up on him and would never answer the phone. And if I'm correct, is it in 1983, my wife and I, again, going back, to some old stuff here, my brother, oldest brother, was able to get hold of a book that was written on general student. I think it was called just General Student. We've got that book. I think maybe my brother Tim may have that book in the family. But that's the legacy, the lure, and that's the way I heard it.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're very welcome.
So I thought you guys would find that really interesting. I hope you did. So Kelly, we want to add some extra stuff to our mix here. Now, I'd asked people in our Spooktacular crew if there are any mysteries that they found fascinating. And I have quite a few that I find fascinating. So I thought that having a few shows here in the future, we'll throw them in every so often, talking about mysteries like, is John Wilkes Booth in his grave?
That's a good one.
Did he really get killed and everything like they said, or did he get away? Because some people think he got away.
We'll see.
We just talked about Hitler. Did he go to Argentina?
Oh.
Or did he die down in the bunker?
Yeah.
After committing suicide?
Right.
How about Meriwether Lewis? A lot of people say he committed suicide, but was he murdered?
Very well could have been.
The Mary Celeste fate. What happened? What happened to Amelia Earhart?
Another good question.
How about the missing princes of England? The Man in the Iron Mask?
So many to delve
so
into.
Many mysteries in history. So we'll be having some episodes on that. But what I'm really excited that we are adding into the mix, Kelly, we love doing our haunted cemeteries, right?
Yes, we do.
We have, do we have any listeners that aren't Taphophiles? Don't you all love cemeteries out there?
I would say that the majority of them do enjoy them.
Even if you're not into ghosts, you enjoy cemeteries, right? Well, there's only so many that are haunted. There are thousands and thousands and thousands that aren't haunted. So why not talk about those?
Looking forward to doing that too.
Way back in the day, I would do Stones and Bones as bonus episodes over for our patrons. We're going to bring that over to the regular free feed. Going to start it all over again and bring you Stones and Bones.
Love it.
Think that people will enjoy that. I know one thing that people really love that you suggested that we add to our shows, because we have so many of them, are our bloopers.
Well, we just have so much fun when we're screwing up. So,
well, and we've come up with some fun stuff too, like our songs.
Oh God, the poor listeners' ears that are bleeding.
Here's some of our best of bloopers. Once she patented her in. God, some of these words I have such a hard time.
That's all, folks.
Once she patented.
Patented. They checked security camera footage and saw multiple arms. The arms are flying around.
The arms were flying all around the room.
Arms are just disembodied and they're flying around the room.
That would definitely get my attention more
on
than
camera.
Orbs. Orbs are so blasé compared to arms flying around.
I mean, I'd much rather see arms flying around.
You would? I'd be running out of there for sure.
We'd get famous with the footage.
That's true.
It seems the land had a case of orange fever. That's what they called this fervor that overtook some people who purchased land in Florida.
Maybe you get it when you have too much orange juice as well.
Perhaps. I got a fever, and the only cure for it is more cowbell.
Christopher Walken.
There you go with that earworm. Some days later, W.F. Lynch stood on the
Snopes of Mount Hermon.
There you go.
That's where Snopes got its name from.
Jeez.
The Massachusetts I cannot
legislature?
say S is before legislature. I can't even say legislature. Legislature is like rule, horror. Just there's words that they should not exist because you can't say them. While the highs and wows.
Highs and wows. It's a wowie wow wine.
I mean, it's Neolithic wine. Wow. Can you imagine the aging on that stuff? You probably shouldn't drink it.
Probably vinegar by now.
Yeah, might kill you. While the highs and I want to do it again. It's wise, not wows. Sorry.
What?
I'm sorry it is haunted. I don't
Wait
know
a
what I'm
minute.
saying.
Rewind that.
I only researched it. I don't know what I'm talking about. It is haunted.
Researched and wrote it.
The hospital and property was sold at auction to Frank
Bartholomew. How many sips of that glass of wine have you had?
I just have
It
was just a little teeny glass of it.
That's so bad.
The hospital and property was sold at auction to Frank I can't do Bartholomew. And they pride themselves on their slower process and small slower process.
Apparition.
Apparition. It's an apparition. It almost sounds like an apparition and operation together, which kind of goes hand in hand since we're talking about ghosts. Kelly?
Well, it does. Initially, I went to the operation game and I saw the red nose lighten up.
Well, you know what I should do because you're
Vibrating.
making fun of the way I said it? That's what I should do to you. I should just pinch you right now. And much of this has been protected since 1935.
35 just suddenly jumped forward a year.
Yeah.
How'd you get 5 out of 4?
I don't know. I like the number 5. It's my favorite.
Since
my
when?
It's my lucky number. It's always been my lucky number. Kristen left the house abandoned for a while, but local code
Cord? It's a cord.
It was cord enforcement, but local cord. Now I did it on purpose. Oh, see what you did to me, Kelly.
It's all my fault.
In the month of February, on the 6th, in 1788, Massachusetts became the 6th state to ratify the new It's a new you in the new year.
Oh, my word. And 3, there has been no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified are extraterrestrial.
They were very extra.
They're so extra. Told his wife that he flew a plane loaded with UFO debris and several small alien bodies from Roswell.
Whale?
I do declare. The Seminoles had formed a partnership with some mercenaries, and this group of 10 men broke into the fart.
How do you break into a fart? I could see you breaking in while somebody's farting, or farting while you're breaking in. But how do you break into a fart?
fart's breaking out.
Oh my gosh. Just don't fart, Kelly. We're in a small closet here.
And stop making fun of me. I might gas you out.
Kelly, what do you think we're doing here?
I keep reading White Shart Hotels.
I mean, I don't think you want to shart into anything that's white, for sure.
Regardless, being employed for a performance requiring a foul-flying flatulence accompanied by a whistle certainly is odd.
That oddity stunk, Kelly.
Well, thank you.
I'm the Bone Daddy.
We're off to see the digger, the wonderful digger of graves. We hear he is a fan of the grim, if ever a fan there was. We'll bring him this work, it's surely a perk to have this chap that works for us. Because of the beautiful work he does.
Egad.
And death won't hurt anymore. It's inevitable. Knocking at your door. Yes, death. Welcome aboard. It's death.
Diane, you have to stop talking!
We want to thank you guys for joining us. Some of you have been with us for, I think, almost the full 10 years. A lot of you for 9, 8, 7. And our executive producers, this year, I will be sending out like the 7th t-shirt that they're going to be getting, which means they have supported the show for 7 years at a $10 or above level.
Yeah, that's so incredible. Thank you so much for everyone that supports History Goes Bump, but especially those that have been with us for so long.
Exactly. And we love our executive producers. And even for those of you who just take a show and share it, play it out loud in your office or what have you, and say, hey, guys, check out this podcast. It all means the world to us. You have helped us to get to over 8 million downloads. We could not have gotten here without you guys.
Yes, we appreciate you guys so much.
So we're very thankful. And Kelly, here is to another 10 years.
Cheers.